an immortal yeti in jean shorts, standing beside a golf cart in a park that has not changed in 200 years, while every single person he worked with has left to build a life somewhere else. That is the last image regular show gives you of Skips. Not a battle, not a farewell speech, not a dramatic final skip into the sunset. Just a man, if you can call a centuries-old yeti a man, in the same place he has always been, doing the same work he has always done, alone in a way that feels less like tragedy and more like a decision he made a long time ago and never reversed. The show aired its finale, a regular epic final battle, on January 16th, 2017. In the epilogue, set 25 years after the main events, every character gets a montage. Mordecai becomes a painter, marries, raises 3 children. Rigby and Eileen settle down with 2 daughters. Muscle Man and Starla fill a trailer with kids who rip off their shirts and yell. High Five Ghost becomes a party DJ in Prague. Benson inherits the park from the late Mr. Maillard, marries Pam, adopts cats, and Skips trades his jeans for jean shorts and keeps mowing. David Bowie's Heroes plays over the montage. Everyone else is living. Skips is remaining. That image contains the entire story of this character. 8 seasons, 244 episodes. A backstory that stretches across centuries, through love and violence, and the slow erosion of everyone he has ever known. And the show closes on him in the same garage, beside the same golf cart, in the same park, still skipping. The thing about Skips is not that he cannot leave. Immortality does not chain anyone to a location. The thing about Skips is that he will not, because leaving would mean accepting that everything he lost was behind him, and he is not willing to do that. Not yet. Maybe not ever. The park is not his workplace. The park is his vigil. This is Velvo. Settle in. This one is going to take a while. To understand Skips, you have to understand what regular show is actually about. The show, created by J.G. Quintel and aired on Cartoon Network from September 6th, 2010 to January 16th, 2017, presents itself as a comedy about 2 23-year-old slackers, Mordecai, a blue jay, and Rigby, a raccoon, who work as groundskeepers at a park and would rather do anything than their jobs. The supernatural chaos that erupts in every episode, the demons, the portals, the sentient video games, the cosmic battles, is the show's signature. But underneath the absurdity, regular show is a story about the holding pattern of early adulthood. The period where you know you should be building something, but cannot quite bring yourself to start. Mordecai and Rigby are in the holding pattern. Benson is managing the holding pattern. Pops is oblivious to the holding pattern. Skips is the only character who has already left the holding pattern and come back. He has already built something. He already lost it. The holding pattern is not, for Skips, a stage of development. It is a choice, a deliberate decision to stop moving forward, to remain in one place, to perform the same tasks, in the same garage, in the same park. Because moving forward means moving away from the last place where things made sense. Skips is not stuck. Skips is anchored. And the anchor is buried so deep that pulling it up would destroy the foundation of everything he has built in the centuries since he dropped it. The show reveals this gradually, across 8 seasons and more than a dozen episodes that center on Skips or use him as a critical supporting figure. Each revelation layers on top of the previous one, building a portrait of a character whose depth is disproportionate to his screen time. In most episodes, Skips is a supporting player, the guy who walks in, knows the answer, fixes the problem, and goes back to his garage. But in his spotlight episodes, the show peels back the calm exterior and shows you what is underneath. And what is underneath is not what you expect. Not wisdom, not peace, not the quiet contentment of a life well lived. What is underneath is grief so old it has fossilized into personality, and a loneliness so total that Skips does not even recognize it as loneliness anymore. It is just the texture of his days. To tell this story properly requires going through those episodes in sequence, examining what each one reveals and how each revelation changes the picture. The story of Skips is not a story about a single event. It is a story about what a single event does to a person over the course of centuries, and how the person keeps going anyway. Not because they have healed, but because they have not yet found a reason to stop. The first time the show tells you that something is wrong with Skips, not wrong in the way that things go wrong on regular show, where a microwave explodes into a portal or a karaoke machine summons a demon. But wrong in the quiet, permanent way that defines a life is in the 5th episode of the entire series. The episode is called Free Cake. It aired on October 4th, 2010, barely a month after regular show premiered on September 6th of that year. And at the time, nobody watching would have understood what they were looking at. The episode presents itself as a comedy about cake. Mordecai and Rigby want chocolate cake. They do not have money. They discover it is Skip's birthday and decide to throw him a surprise party so they can eat the cake from the snack bar for free. That is the premise. It is played for laughs, and the laughs work. Rigby's desperate selfishness, Mordecai's slightly better, but still fundamentally selfish version of the same impulse. Muscle Man, offering to take off his clothes because he thinks it is that kind of party. All of it lands. The episode moves at the pace of a sitcom. Obstacle, solution, obstacle, solution, escalation. But underneath that premise, in the final act, the episode does something the show will spend the next 7 years returning to. Mordecai and Rigby go looking for Skips in the woods. They find him performing a ritual. He is alone. It is dark. There are candles arranged around him. He is dancing a specific dance, a spirit dance, the show calls it, and the animation holds on his body, moving in a rhythm that is nothing like the comedy the episode has been playing for 10 minutes. It is solemn. It is private. The movements are deliberate and specific, as though each step has been rehearsed 1,000 times, which, given the timeline the show will later establish, it literally has. This is something Skips does every year, on his birthday, by himself, in the woods, because his life depends on it. Rigby interrupts the dance, not maliciously, casually, the way Rigby interrupts everything, without thinking, without considering consequences, because consequences are something that happens to other people. The aftermath is immediate and total. A vehicle descends from the sky. A figure named Gary, a flamboyant, Bowie-esque character who drives an El Camino through space, appears and takes Skips to the realm of the Guardians of Eternal Youth. These Guardians are a group of floating babies who hold dominion over immortality. They are eccentric, petulant, and, as the show will reveal across multiple seasons, deeply intertwined with the most painful chapters of Skip's past. Because Skips did not complete the dance, they strip his eternal youth. The process is depicted with a specificity that borders on horror for a children's show. Skips ages, his fur grays, his body shrinks, he shrivels, he crumbles to dust in front of Mordecai and Rigby, who are too stunned to process what they are seeing. Think about what this scene is doing. The 5th episode of a show that is primarily about 2 slackers eating junk food and playing video games shows one of its main characters dying of old age in a matter of seconds, reduced to ash because a ritual he performs alone every single year was interrupted by someone who wanted cake. The show has barely introduced Skips at this point. He is the strong, quiet guy who lives in the garage. That is the extent of the audience's understanding. And now he is dead on the floor, and the comedy has evaporated, and the Guardians are staring down at Mordecai and Rigby with the impassive authority of beings who have been enforcing this contract for longer than anyone can remember. Mordecai and Rigby trade the chocolate cake to the Guardians to bring Skips back. It works. The Guardians love cake. The exchange is absurd, a life for a dessert, and the absurdity is the point. Regular show operates on a logic where the stakes are always real and the solutions are always ridiculous. And the gap between those two things is where the comedy lives. The episode ends on a joke. The replacement cake that Pops brought has vanilla in the middle, and Mordecai and Rigby groan. The audience laughs. The credits roll. The episode is 11 minutes long, and most people who watched it on October 4th, 2010, probably forgot about it within a day. But the episode has already told you everything you need to know about Skips if you are paying attention. His immortality is conditional. It requires maintenance. Annual, solitary, ritualistic maintenance. It requires him to perform a dance that nobody else understands, in a place where nobody can see him, on a day that is supposed to be about celebration, but has become, for Skips, about survival. And when that ritual fails, he does not fight it. He does not protest or bargain or rage against the Guardians. He accepts his aging and his death with a resignation that reads, even in this early episode, less like shock and more like familiarity, as though some part of him has been waiting for this moment, as though the cage of immortality has been weighing on him for so long that when the lock finally opens, the feeling is not terror. It is something adjacent to relief. There is a structural decision in this episode that deserves closer examination. The show chooses to make Skip's birthday the occasion for his spirit dance. Not an arbitrary date on the calendar, his birthday. The day that celebrates his existence is the day he must perform labor to justify that existence continuing. Every other character at the park gets a birthday that is simply a birthday. Cake, presents, the uncomplicated warmth of people acknowledging that you were born. Skips gets a deadline. His birthday is not a celebration. It is a renewal notice. And the fact that he goes to the woods alone to perform it, rather than incorporating it into the party or explaining it to his friends, tells you that Skips has decided the ritual is not something to share. It is private in the way that breathing is private, essential, automatic, and too fundamental to discuss. The guardians of eternal youth themselves are worth pausing on. They are depicted as floating babies, ancient beings in infant bodies, wearing diapers, sucking on pacifiers, speaking with the authority of gods and the attention span of toddlers. They are simultaneously terrifying and absurd, which is the show's signature mode, but their design serves a specific narrative function. The beings who hold power over Skip's life and death are children. They are capricious, emotional, and easily bribed. The most powerful entities in Skip's existence can be placated with chocolate cake. This is not a commentary on cosmic justice. It is a commentary on the arbitrary nature of the forces that govern a life. Skip's immortality is maintained not through merit or devotion, but through annual compliance with a contract enforced by toddlers who like sweets. The grandeur of his sacrifice, and it is a sacrifice, as later episodes will make devastatingly clear, is administered by beings who are not equipped to understand its weight. The show does not explore these implications in season 1. It files them away. It lets Skips go back to being the guy who fixes things, the calm presence in the garage, the one Mordecai and Rigby run to when the supernatural goes sideways. His voice, gravelly, deliberate, and delivered by Mark Hamill in what Wikipedia describes as an impression of Harvey Fierstein, becomes a reliable anchor in every episode. When Skip speaks, the chaos pauses. When Skips acts, the problem gets solved. He is the character the show leans on when it needs stability, and the audience accepts his stability without questioning what it costs him. That questioning will come later. For now, Skips is the fixer, the reliable one, the man in the garage who always knows what to do. The seed of something much more complicated has been planted, but it will not break the surface for another season. Before we move on, if you are enjoying this analysis, please consider subscribing. It helps the channel tremendously. The second season of Regular Show aired its 21st episode on May 23rd, 2011. It is called Over the Top, and it is the episode where Skips kills Rigby. Not metaphorically, not in a dream sequence, not as a fake out that gets reversed before the scene ends. Skips, in a rage, slams Rigby through a solid table with enough force to break the table and end a life. The episode opens in a hospital. Rigby is dead. Skips is responsible. The show then rewinds to explain how it happened, and the explanation is worse than the act itself. What happened is this. The park employees go to a bar called McCooligan's for an employee's night out. Arm wrestling is the entertainment. Skips takes on everyone and wins effortlessly because Skips is the strongest being at the park, and arm wrestling is a test of strength, and there is no mystery here. When he gets to Rigby, Rigby beats him, then beats him again, then again. Each time, Rigby gloats with the specific cruelty that only Rigby is capable of. Performative, oblivious, relentless. Each time, Skips gets angrier. Not irritated in the way Benson gets irritated, which is a surface emotion that passes. Angry in a way that changes the quality of his eyes, that tightens his jaw, that makes the audience, which has spent a season and a half watching Skips be the most stable person in the room, suddenly aware that stability is not the same as peace. The escalation is methodical. The show takes its time. Skips goes to Mordecai and Rigby's room and destroys their video game console. Not in a moment of passion. He walks over to it and smashes it with deliberate force. Mordecai, who had nothing to do with the arm wrestling matches, watches in helpless anger. Skips does not care. He tears through the room looking for evidence of cheating, overturning furniture, emptying drawers. He is not investigating. He is unraveling. The careful, measured, centuries-old Skips has been replaced by something older than his manners. A primal refusal to accept that he is not the best, that his strength is not supreme, that all those centuries of accumulation have failed him in a bar game against a raccoon. When Mordecai finally reveals that Rigby has been using a Playco arm boy, a toy that enhances arm strength, purchased for what appears to be around $20, Skip storms storms back to McCooligan's. He rips the device off Rigby's arm. He forces a real rematch. And then, with Rigby's actual unenhanced raccoon arm in his grip, Skips does not just win. He pulverizes. He throws Rigby through the table with a force that is so wildly disproportionate to the situation that the show does not even try to play it as an accident. This is what happens when an immortal yeti, who has been fighting cosmic bullies for centuries, applies full strength to a 23-year-old raccoon. The result is not a funny injury. The result is death. The show cuts to Rigby's body on a hospital bed. The sound design goes quiet. Mordecai stares. The park employees leave the room one by one, unable to look at Skips. And Skips stands there, looking at the person he killed. And the expression on his face is not the blank calm that defines him in every other episode. It is something closer to recognition. He knows what he is. He has always known. The calm is the thing he built to contain it. And now the containment has failed. The remainder of the episode follows Skips as he challenges Death to an arm wrestling match to win Rigby's soul back. The stakes are absolute. If Skips wins, Rigby comes back. If Death wins, Death gets to kill Skips permanently. Skips takes the bet without hesitation. Not because he is brave in the way that heroes in children's shows are brave, with a quip and a confident smirk. Because he just killed someone in a moment of vanity. And the only way to undo it is to risk everything. And risking everything is preferable to living with what he did. Death himself is depicted with a comically muscular right arm. Trained, the show implies, specifically for this matchup. Their rivalry is eternal. Death wants Skips because Skips should not exist. An immortal being is a personal affront to the Grim Reaper. Every day Skips draws breath is a day. Death's jurisdiction has been violated. The arm wrestling match is a proxy for that larger grievance, a personal contest wrapped in a cosmic argument about whether anyone has the right to live forever. Skips wins. He wins by using the same Playco arm boy that started the problem. The irony is deliberate, and the show does not undersell it. Skips cheated Death using the same tool that Rigby used to cheat him. The lesson he offers Rigby afterward, do not cheat, he says, essentially, and adds that he only used the device to save a life, is undermined by everything the audience just watched. Skips is not offering wisdom. He is offering a rationalization. The truth, which the episode deposits into the audience's consciousness without ever stating it aloud, is simpler. Skips is capable of monstrous things, and the only barrier between that capability and its expression is a self-control that took centuries to build and can be demolished in an afternoon by a raccoon with a toy. Over the Top is not an aberration in Skip's story. It is a confession. The calm is real. The rage is also real. And the centuries of experience that separate Skips from every other character in the park are not a gift. They are the accumulated weight of every time he had to rebuild the cage after something broke it open. The episode does not redeem him. It does not explain his behavior as a symptom of trauma or a consequence of immortality. It just shows you what he did, and what he did to fix it, and lets you sit with the knowledge that this is the same character who meditates by candlelight and dances the spirit dance alone in the woods. The same hands, the same strength, the same capacity for love and for destruction, held in the body of a yeti who skips because a girl he loved used to skip with him hundreds of years ago, in a world that no longer exists. What Over the Top also establishes, and what later episodes will build upon, is Skip's relationship with Death as a character. Death in regular show is not a metaphor or a hooded figure with a scythe. He is a person. He has a voice, a personality, a grudge. He arm wrestles. He bowls. He is invited to parties. He is, in the show's cosmology, one of the few beings who exist on the same timescale as Skips, which makes their rivalry not just cosmic, but oddly intimate. They have been circling each other for centuries. Death wants Skips to die because that is Death's function. Skips refuses to die because he made a deal with the Guardians. And so they meet, and they compete, and they go their separate ways, and neither of them changes. Because both of them are locked into roles that neither of them chose, and neither of them can escape. Death is the antagonist Skips understands best, because Death is the only other character who knows what it means to be defined by a single function, performed across an unending span of time. The arm wrestling match at the end of Over the Top is, in a sense, the purest distillation of Skip's life. Two ancient beings, locked in a struggle that neither of them started, fighting for stakes that matter to people who do not understand the larger context, using strength they have spent centuries accumulating. Skips wins this time, but the match is not a resolution. It is a round. There will be more rounds. There always are. Skip's relationship with technology provides a different angle on the same fundamental tension, the gap between who Skips is and what the world has become while he was busy staying the same. The 15th episode of the 3rd season, Skips vs. Technology, aired on February 6th, 2012, and it opens with a montage that would be charming if it were not also terrifying. The montage spans centuries. Skips fixing a wheel on a cannon during what appears to be the Revolutionary War. Skips giving his friend Samson, the man who will later become the cyborg Tecmo, a wooden prosthetic arm in 1783. Skips repairing fences in what looks like the 19th century. Skips replacing engine parts in the early 20th century. Skips fixing walls, roofs, plumbing, electrical wiring, each era bleeding into the next. His body unchanged while the technology around him evolves from wood to iron to steel to circuitry. The montage is scored to I Get Around by the Beach Boys, and it is meant to be fun. The animation is bouncy, the pacing is quick, but the cumulative effect of watching one being fix everything for over 200 years is not lighthearted. It is a portrait of compulsion. The montage does not show Skips resting. It does not show him reading or thinking or sitting in a chair and staring out a window. It shows him working, tool in hand, problem in front of him, solution applied, next problem, century after century after century. And then the montage arrives at the present, and the problem is a computer, and Skips stares at the screen the way a swimmer stares at a desert. He does not know what to do. For the first time in the show's history, the character whose defining trait is that he always knows what to do is confronted with a problem he cannot solve. Mordecai and Rigby have accidentally triggered an error 219, on the park's computer, and they need it fixed. They go to Skips. Skip's first instinct is to hit the computer with a sledgehammer. Mordecai and Rigby stop him. His second instinct is to go to the library and learn about computers. He returns, applies what he learned, and makes it worse. The error mutates into error 220. The situation escalates. The comedy of Skip's technological incompetence is broad and effective. He goes to a computer store. He cannot find the internet button. He opens too many programs and crashes the store's display model. The teenagers working the help desk are dismissive and cruel in the way that teenagers are to anyone over 30. Except Skips is not over 30. He is over 300. The generational gap that makes the scene funny is not the gap between a baby boomer and a millennial. It is the gap between the 18th century and the 21st. And the joke is that no amount of wisdom or experience or centuries of accumulated knowledge can help you if you do not know where to click. Tecmo arrives to save the day. Tecmo, formerly Samson, has done what Skips refused to do. He has changed. He merged with technology, literally incorporating machines into his body, becoming a cyborg who speaks in tech jargon and drives a car that looks like a DeLorean. Their partnership recalls the era when they were both young, storm chasing in the 1700s, chasing tornadoes in hot air balloons, before the world divided into people who adapted and people who endured. Tecmo adapted. Skips endured. The difference between them is the difference between evolution and stubbornness, and the episode does not pretend that stubbornness is a virtue. It just observes that stubbornness is what Skips has. The virus they fight becomes a literal monster, Doom-mageddon, and they defeat it through a combination of Tecmo's technical skill and Skip's brute strength. The show gives the battle sequence full action movie treatment, complete with debris and explosions, and Skips wielding a sledgehammer against a digital entity made flesh. The resolution is satisfying, but the final beat is the one that matters. Mordecai and Rigby reveal why they did not want Skips near the computer. They were printing a thank you note, a note for Skips, thanking him for all the times he helped them. They did not want to ruin the surprise. The show holds on Skips reading the note. His expression softens. The episode ends with him returning to the destroyed room, walls torn open, furniture shattered, and picking up tools to fix it. Physical damage, tangible repairs, the things he knows. The message the episode presents is warm. You do not have to master everything. The people who care about you will appreciate what you can do, not resent what you cannot. But the message the episode contains is cooler. Skips returns to physical labor because that is all he knows. and the world will keep moving towards screens and code and systems that his hands cannot fix. And the thank you note, sincere as it is, does not change the fact that the next computer error will stump him too. Gratitude does not close the gap between a yeti with a sledgehammer and a world that runs on software. It just makes the gap bearable for one more day. The gap between Skips and the world is not just technological, it is temporal. And the show explores this gap not only through the big spotlight episodes, but through the accumulation of small moments across ordinary episodes. The moments where Skips is present but peripheral, where his centuries of experience create a subtle dissonance with the world around him. In episode after episode, Skips fixes problems that the younger characters created, and the fixing is done with an efficiency that borders on the mechanical. He does not celebrate the fix. He does not gloat about being right. He does not use the moment to teach a lesson or deliver wisdom. He just fixes it and goes back to the garage. This pattern, repeated across dozens and dozens of episodes, builds a portrait not through dramatic revelation, but through sheer volume. The audience watches Skips fix things for years, and at some point, without a specific triggering moment, they begin to wonder, what does Skips do when there is nothing to fix? The answer, which the show has been providing all along in the background of every episode, is nothing. He sits in his garage. He lifts weights. He shuffles cards. He waits for the next problem. The fixing is not a skill Skips possesses. It is the activity that prevents him from having to exist without a task. This understanding that Skip's competence is not a gift, but a coping mechanism, is one of the things that separates regular shows' treatment of the character from the way similar characters are handled in other animated shows. The wise mentor archetype in animation is typically presented as a figure of aspiration. The audience is supposed to admire their calm, their knowledge, their ability to provide guidance. Skips subverts this, not by being incompetent or fraudulent, but by being honest. He is wise. He is calm. He does provide guidance. But the wisdom comes from centuries of surviving loss. The calm comes from centuries of suppressing rage. And the guidance comes from centuries of having solved the same problems over and over until the solutions are as automatic as breathing. There is nothing aspirational about it. There is something admirable about it, in the way that endurance is always admirable. But the admiration is tinged with the recognition that nobody would choose this if they had another option. Skips did not choose to be wise. Wisdom happened to him the way weather happens to a mountain. He stood there long enough, and the elements carved him into a shape that other people call wisdom, and the carving took things from him that he will never get back. Before we move on, if you are enjoying this analysis, please consider subscribing. It helps the channel tremendously. There is a moment early in the third season, the third episode, Skip Strikes, which aired on October 3rd, 2011, that reveals something essential about the architecture of Skip's inner life. The park employees form a bowling team. They are called the Park Strikers. Skips is their best player. He bowls strike after strike with the mechanical consistency of someone who has had centuries to perfect his form. The team advances to the championship, where their opponents are a team called the Magical Elements, a roster of recurring supernatural figures, including Death, Gary, a guardian of eternal youth, and a wizard. Before the match begins, Death approaches Skips in private. He makes a threat. If Skips plays in the tournament, Death will tell everyone Skips' secret, his real name, Walks. Skips leaves the team. He does not explain why. He tells his friends he cannot play and walks, not skips, walks, away from the bowling alley. The park employees are confused and frustrated. They know they cannot win without him. They go to the championship anyway, because the match is happening regardless. Rigby, in what is arguably the most catastrophically stupid decision in a series full of catastrophically stupid decisions, bets their souls against Death in a side wager. If Death's team wins, he gets all of their souls. If the Park Strikers win, Rigby gets a bowling ball filled with souls. The other park employees learn about this bet at the worst possible moment and are, understandably, horrified. When Skips finds out what Rigby has done, that his friends' eternal souls are now at stake in a bowling tournament, he returns. He walks back into the bowling alley knowing what it will cost him. Death will reveal his name, the identity he has maintained for centuries. The name that carries the weight of everything he lost will be stripped away in front of his coworkers as casually as reading a scoreboard. Skips picks up his bowling ball anyway. He says something to the effect that his friends' souls are more important than his secret. He invites Death to do his worst. Death tells everyone. He announces that Skip's real name is not Skips. It is Walks. And the reaction from the park employees is nothing. Not shock, not curiosity, not a demand for explanation. A shrug. An acceptance so complete and so immediate that it circles back around to being devastating. The name that Skips guarded like a wound. The identity shift that cost him everything. The word that connects him to the worst night of his life. It means nothing to the people he loves. They call him Skips because that is what they call him. The history behind the name is invisible to them, and they do not need to see it to continue caring about him. The comedy is in the anticlimax. All that tension, all that drama, and the secret turns out to be a name change. But the ache beneath the comedy is in the gap between significance and perception. The name Walks is not just a former identity for Skips. It is the name that Mona knew him by. It is the name he carried on the night of the prom, the night of the fists of justice, the night the ceiling collapsed. Every time someone calls him Skips, they are using the name he chose after losing her. Every time they do not ask why he changed it, they are unknowingly standing on the surface of a grief that runs deeper than any of them can reach. Skip's secret is not his name. His secret is that his name is a memorial, and nobody he tells will ever understand what it memorializes. The episode Diary, which aired as the 33rd episode of Season 3 on July 23rd, 2012, extends this exploration of Skip's grief into territory that borders on the unbearable. The main plot concerns Mordecai and Rigby accidentally destroying the lock on Margaret's diary while house-sitting for her. They need to fix the diary before Margaret returns from a weekend trip with her parents. They go to Skips, as they always go to Skips, and he knows a ritual that can repair it, a process involving closing their eyes and performing a transference from one notebook to another. The ritual works, mostly, after complications involving a guardian of secrets who materializes and wreaks havoc on Margaret's apartment building. The A-plot resolves with the kind of controlled chaos that regular show executes better than any animated show of its era. Margaret comes home. The diary is intact. Normalcy returns. Or at least the regular show version of normalcy, which involves a giant monster having recently climbed the exterior of an apartment complex. But the final minute of the episode belongs entirely to Skips, and it is one of the quietest, most devastating minutes in the entire series. After the crisis is resolved, Skips turns to Mordecai and Rigby. He asks them a question. He asks them if they remember why he always skips, why he moves the way he moves, why his gait is what it is, why an immortal yeti hops everywhere instead of walking. Mordecai says yes, and Skips looks at them and tells them, essentially, that they do not. They do not remember. Or more precisely, they do not understand. They know the fact that Skips skips because of a woman he lost, but the knowing is surface level, a piece of trivia stored alongside episode titles and character names, not the bone-deep knowledge that comes from having lived it. Skips is telling them that the reason he skips is not something that can be transmitted through words. It can only be experienced, and they have not experienced it, and they never will. The episode has revealed, through Skip's earlier dialogue and the show's ongoing mythology, that the reason he skips is connected to a woman he loved. A woman who used to skip with him. When she died, he vowed to skip for the rest of his life. So he would carry her with him in the only way an immortal being can carry a mortal person, through motion, through rhythm, through the physical habit of the body, repeating a gesture that once belonged to both of them. He changed his name from Walks to Skips. He has been doing it every day, every hour, every step, for centuries. And now, standing in the ruins of an apartment complex on a summer evening in the 21st century, surrounded by friends who know his story without understanding its depth, he has forgotten why. The implication, carried across the series rather than stated in any single episode, is that the ritual has outlasted the memory. The motion has outlasted the meaning. Skips skips because he has always skipped, and the woman at the center of that vow has become, over centuries, what all memories become when given enough time. A shape without features, a feeling without a name, a presence that is more absence than presence. The act of repeating a gesture forever is its own kind of erosion, because the thing being remembered gets compressed and smoothed and worn down by the repetition, until the original experience is distant and only the habit remains. The dedication has become an instinct. The monument has become a reflex. The show does not score this moment with dramatic music. It does not give Skips a monologue about the nature of loss or the cruelty of time. It gives him 3 words in response to Mordecai and Rigby's claim that they remember. The line, as transcribed, is roughly, "No you don't," and then it lets him walk away. Whether Skips is telling them they do not truly understand, or admitting something about his own fading memory, or both, the show does not clarify. The ambiguity is the point. This is one of the most quietly devastating things regular show does to Skips. Not killing him, or threatening his immortality, or making him fight cosmic bullies. Showing that the distance between his experience and everyone else's is unbridgeable. The entire architecture of his life, the skipping, the name, the solitude, the spirit dance, the refusal to leave the park, the way he holds the locket, is built on an experience that no one around him can access. The people who call him Skips do not know what the name carries. The people who see him skip do not know what the motion memorializes. And Skips, who has been alive long enough to know that explanation is not the same as understanding, does not try to close the gap. He just tells them they do not remember, and he walks away. Regular show understands grief in a way that very few animated shows even attempt. Most shows treat grief as an arc with a shape that bends upward and ends with healing. A character loses someone, suffers, reaches a crisis, finds resolution, and moves forward as a slightly different version of themselves. Regular show treats grief as something else entirely, a permanent alteration to the geometry of a life, a change so fundamental that the person experiencing it does not return to their previous shape, but rather builds a new existence around the hole that the loss created. Skips does not heal from Mona's death. He does not process it. He does not reach acceptance. He builds his entire existence around the absence. And then, in the cruelest twist the show can devise, he loses even the ability to feel the absence clearly. The pain has not gone. It has become so diffuse, so integrated into the texture of his daily life, that he can no longer distinguish it from the rest of himself. The grief has become him. He cannot see it the same way a fish cannot see water. This is what happens when grief is given enough time. And regular show, a show about time, always about time, understands this with a clarity that most dramas aimed at adult audiences fail to achieve. The mechanisms that make grief survivable in the short term, the gradual softening, the selective forgetting, the replacement of specific images with generalized feelings, are the same mechanisms that eventually erase the thing being grieved. Skips was supposed to skip forever, so he would never forget. But forever contains its own contradiction. Nothing lasts forever. Not even the memory of the person the forever was for. The show does not resolve this contradiction. It does not give Skips a breakthrough where he suddenly remembers everything. It does not introduce a magical device that restores his memory. It leaves the forgetting in place as a permanent feature of his existence and asks the audience to sit with the question of what a vow means when the person who inspired it has become indistinct. The answer, which the show implies without stating, is that the vow still means something, not what it originally meant, not the specific, personal, intimate thing it was supposed to be, but something. The skipping has become its own purpose. The rhythm has become its own meaning. Whether that is enough is a question the show trusts the audience to answer for themselves. The obligation that defines Skip's immortality takes its most explicit form in Fists of Justice, the 24th episode of the 3rd season, which aired on April 30th, 2012. Here, the cyclical nature of his contract with the Guardians is made literal. Every 157 years, a being named Clorgbane, the Destroyer, returns, and Skips must fight him using the Fists of Justice, golden gauntlets designed by the Guardians for this specific purpose. This is not a quest or an adventure. It is a recurring appointment on a cosmic calendar every 157 years. The same enemy, the same weapons, the same fight. For eternity. In this particular cycle, the fight goes wrong because of an accident that has nothing to do with cosmic destiny. Rigby accidentally crushes Skip's fingers in the lid of Pop's harpsichord. The harpsichord is stuck in a doorway. The park employees are trying to move it. The lid falls. Skip's fighting hands are destroyed by furniture. The mundanity of the injury is the point. Clorgbane's arrival is determined by celestial mechanics. Skip's inability to fight is determined by an intern who did not check whether a lid had a support stick. Destiny runs on a schedule. Life does not. Gary arrives in his El Camino and takes Skips to the Guardian's realm. Skips is given the fists of justice. He puts them on. He goes to fight Clorgbane, and every punch is agony because his fingers are broken, and the gauntlets require a grip, and the grip requires fingers that work. The show does not minimize the pain. It shows Skips wincing with each swing, absorbing damage he should not have to absorb, fighting a fight that should have been won easily, if not for a piece of furniture and a moment of carelessness. The cosmic and the domestic collide, and the domestic wins. One of the Guardians, Archibald, the smallest and most impetuous of the group, decides that he can take Clorgbane himself. He steps forward. He is killed instantly. The show depicts this without hesitation or comedy. Archibald charges at Clorgbane and ceases to exist. The remaining Guardians, reduced from 5 to 4, decide in their panic to let Mordecai and Rigby use the fists of justice. The two struggle with the gauntlets. They are heavy, unwieldy, designed for a different kind of strength, until Skips tells them the controls work like a video game, like Alley Fight Dudes, a fictional game they play in their living room. This detail is played for laughs, and it works, because the idea that ancient cosmic weapons operate on the same principles as an NES controller is exactly the kind of absurdity regular show thrives on. Mordecai and Rigby defeat Clorgbane. They send him hurtling through space. He becomes a twinkle in the sky, which is the show's shorthand for gone but not permanent. Clorgbane will return. In 157 years, the cycle will begin again. Skips will be there, because Skips is always there, because that is the contract. The Guardians ask what reward Mordecai and Rigby would like. They choose help moving the harpsichord through the door. The episode ends on a small practical resolution to a small practical problem that accidentally became the reason the world almost ended. The deeper resonance of this episode lies in what it reveals about the nature of Skip's obligation. He does not fight Clorgbane because he wants to. He does not fight because he believes in the cause. He fights because he agreed to, centuries ago, in exchange for immortality. And the agreement does not have an expiration date. Every 157 years, regardless of his condition, regardless of his willingness, regardless of whether his fingers are broken, or his heart is hollowed out, or his memory of why he started this has faded into nothing, Skips puts on the fists and fights. The heroism is real. The futility is also real. And the two coexist in the same character, in the same episode, in the same 11 minutes of television. The distinction between saving and maintaining is the key to understanding Skip's role in regular show across its entire run. Mordecai and Rigby are the ones who create the crises. Their laziness, their impulsiveness, their refusal to follow instructions generates the chaos that drives every episode. Benson is the one who manages the fallout, screaming and threatening and occasionally displaying the competence that earned him his position. Pops provides the emotional center, the warmth and innocence that make the park feel like a place worth caring about. Muscle Man and High Five Ghost add color and texture, and my mom jokes. And Skips fixes what breaks, quietly, without fanfare, without asking for recognition or rest. He walks into the scene, assesses the damage, applies his centuries of knowledge, and returns to his garage. He is the character the show leans on when the plot needs a resolution, and the audience accepts his reliability without questioning what it costs. That cost is the subject of every Skips episode, approached from a different angle each time, and the accumulation of those angles creates a portrait of a character whose depth is wildly disproportionate to his screen time. In most episodes of regular show, probably 200 of the 244, Skips is a supporting player. He appears for a scene, maybe two. He offers advice. He provides muscle. He solves the unsolvable. He has fewer lines than any other main character. His presence is a function, not a personality. And yet, when the show turns its attention to him directly, which it does roughly a dozen times across 8 seasons, the depth that emerges is staggering. Because the show has been using his silence to build something. Every episode where Skips fixes a problem without comment is an episode that adds weight to the episodes where the comment finally arrives. The restraint is not a limitation of the character. It is the character. Skips says little because Skips has decided that saying more would open doors he sealed shut a long time ago. This pattern, presence without disclosure, competence without intimacy, runs through every interaction Skips has with the other park employees. Consider how they relate to him. Mordecai treats Skips as an authority figure, which is closer to the truth than most readings but still incomplete. Mordecai respects Skips' knowledge and defers to his judgment. treatment, but he does not ask about Skip's inner life, his past, his feelings. The respect is professional, not personal. Rigby treats Skips as a resource, someone who exists to solve problems, like a human-shaped Swiss Army knife. This reading is reductive, but Rigby is a reductive thinker, and the show does not punish him for it, so much as it lets the gap between how Rigby sees Skips and who Skips actually is generate its own quiet sadness. Benson sees Skips as the ideal employee, hardworking, uncomplaining, competent, and their relationship is the relationship of a manager who has never had to manage his best worker. They get along because Skips never creates conflict, which means they never have to engage with each other on a level deeper than task allocation. Pops is the only character who occasionally glimpses something else in Skips. Pops, who is himself hiding enormous cosmic significance beneath a veneer of childlike innocence, seems to sense a kinship with Skips that the other characters miss. The two of them share the experience of being more than what they appear. Pops as the universe's chosen one, Skips as an immortal warrior bound to an eternal contract, and the show occasionally pairs them in scenes that carry a charge of mutual recognition. But even Pops does not truly know Skips. Nobody at the park knows Skips. They know what Skips does. They do not know who Skips is, or was, or lost. This isolation, being surrounded by people who like you and rely on you and genuinely care about your well-being, but who cannot access the most important parts of your experience, is a specific and deeply recognizable form of loneliness. It is not the loneliness of abandonment. It is the loneliness of incompatibility. Skip's inner world operates on a timescale that no mortal can share. His losses are measured in centuries. His relationships are measured in the decades before the other person dies. His understanding of time, of consequence, of what matters, and what does not, has been shaped by an accumulation of experience that makes him fundamentally alien to the 23-year-olds he spends his days with. He likes them. He cares about them. He will arm wrestle death for their souls and fight cosmic destroyers on their behalf and travel to the Himalayas to purge his stress so he can continue being available to them. But he cannot explain to them what their friendship means to him, because explaining would require disclosing the context, and the context is 200 years of loss, and 200 years of loss cannot fit into a conversation at a snack bar. The show captures this form of loneliness with extraordinary precision by rarely depicting it directly. Skips does not sit in his garage and monologue about his isolation. He sits in his garage and works out, or repairs equipment, or shuffles cards that nobody will play. The isolation is in the gaps, the moments between scenes, the evenings when the other characters are shown together, and Skips is simply absent. The fact that his house is a garage filled with exercise equipment rather than personal belongings. He does not have photographs on the walls. He does not have decorations. He has tools. The garage is not a home. It is a workshop, and Skips lives in it the way someone might live in an office. Not because it is comfortable, but because leaving would create a gap in the work, and the work is the only thing left. Before we move on, if you are enjoying this analysis, please consider subscribing. It helps the channel tremendously. Season 4 pushes Skip's body to its breaking point in an episode that makes the internal external. Skip's Stress is the 25th episode of the 4th season, airing on May 13th, 2013, and its opening sequence is a symphony of need. Everyone at the park needs Skips. Mordecai and Rigby need him to fix the fountain pump. Benson needs him to paint benches. Pops needs him to plant chrysanthemums. Muscle Man needs him to deal with a ruptured gas line. The requests pile up in a montage that mirrors the centuries-long montage from Skips versus technology, but condensed into a single afternoon. The difference is that in the technology montage, Skips handles each task with effortless competence across eras. In this montage, he handles each task with visible strain, and dark lines begin appearing on his skin. The dark lines run from his extremities toward his heart. A doctor examines him and delivers a diagnosis that, in any realistic medical drama, would prompt immediate hospitalization. Skip's stress has reached lethal levels. He needs to stop working. He needs to rest. He refuses because Skips does not rest. Because resting means sitting still, and sitting still means being alone with the contents of his own mind. And the contents of his own mind include centuries of accumulated loss that he has been outrunning through labor. The benches need painting. The fountain pump needs fixing. The gas line needs repair. As long as there is work, there is purpose. As long as there is purpose, there is a reason not to think about Mona, about Clorgbane, about the spirit dance, about the locket, about everything that sits in the garage alongside the tools and the golf cart and the weight set. Pops tells Skips about an ancient bell in the Himalayas that can purge accumulated stress. The park employees drive there without Muscle Man and High Five Ghost because there is not enough room in Pop's car, a detail the show includes for comedy, but which also functions as a statement about how support systems are never quite big enough. At the bell, Skips rings it, and his stress exits his body as a black, writhing monster. The creature is enormous and featureless and radiating malice, and it is the visual representation of what happens when a person absorbs centuries of other people's problems without ever addressing his own. Skips fights the stress monster. The fight is physical, brutal, and won through force. Skips recovers a ninja sword and destroys the creature. The stress is purged. The dark lines fade. He returns to work. The episode presents this as a victory, and in the immediate term, it is. The monster is gone. Skips is alive. The park is safe. But the episode, viewed within the larger context of Skip's story, is not a victory. It is a reprieve. The stress accumulated because of a pattern of behavior that the episode does not alter. Skips will continue to say yes to every request. He will continue to subordinate his own needs to the needs of the people around him. He will continue to work without rest because rest means stillness, and stillness means memory, and memory means pain. The stress monster will return, not as a literal creature, but as a condition, a slow darkening of the lines on an immortal body that no amount of Himalayan bells can permanently erase. The episode understands this. It does not pretend that a single fight on a mountaintop can fix a problem that has been building for 200 years. It just gives Skips one more day without the monster and lets the audience decide whether that is enough. What Skip's stress illuminates, beyond its immediate narrative, is the mechanism by which regular show translates emotional states into physical ones. This is not unique to Skip's episodes. The entire show operates on a logic where feelings become tangible, where emotional neglect summons literal demons and personal insecurity manifests as a sentient video game character. But Skip's episodes deploy this mechanism with a precision that the broader comedy episodes do not require. The stress monster is not a random supernatural threat. It is the exact shape of Skip's problem, an accumulation that cannot be released through normal channels. Because Skips does not have normal channels. He does not talk. He does not complain. He does not cry. So the stress has nowhere to go, and it builds, and it calcifies, and eventually it becomes a thing with its own body and its own will, a creature born from centuries of swallowed reactions. The supernatural logic does not replace the emotional logic. It externalizes it. It gives the audience something to look at, a black shape on a mountaintop that represents the invisible shape Skips carries inside him every day. This technique is one of the things that makes regular show's treatment of Skips more sophisticated than it might appear on the surface. A lesser show would have Skips sit down with a friend and articulate his feelings. He would say, "I am overwhelmed," and the friend would say, "You need to take care of yourself." And the audience would absorb the lesson and move on. Regular show does not do this because regular show knows that Skips would never say those words. He would not know how to start. The vocabulary of emotional disclosure is a vocabulary learned through practice, through having conversations where feelings are named and examined and discussed. Skips has not had those conversations. He has spent centuries fixing things and fighting things and performing rituals. And the closest he has come to emotional expression is the act of skipping itself. Emotion that once carried the weight of a vow and now carries the weight of a habit. The stress monster is not a substitute for dialogue. It is what happens when dialogue is not an option. The body speaks the words the mouth cannot. The 5th season confronts Skips with the most unsettling possible opponent, himself. A Skips in Time, the 6th episode of the season, aired on September 30th, 2013, and it operates on a premise that sounds like comedy, but functions as existential horror. Atamanado, one of the show's recurring temporal anomalies, deposits a young yeti in the park. He fell out of a hot air balloon while storm chasing with his friend Samson in the 1700s, got sucked into the tornado, and emerged in the 21st century. His name is Walks. He is Skips, centuries younger, before the name change, before the immortality, before everything. Present-day Skips identifies him immediately. The park employees gather around. Walks looks like Skips, but younger, rougher, visibly wilder. His fur is less groomed. His posture is more aggressive. He does not skip. He walks in long, purposeful strides that radiate the kind of confidence that has not yet been tested by loss. Skips explains to Benson that if Walks is not returned to the 1700s, the chain of events that created present-day Skips will never occur, and present-day Skips will age and die. The episode's tension is not about the time travel. The time travel is a mechanism. The tension is about the encounter between who Skips is and who he used to be. Walks is everything present-day Skips has suppressed. He is combative. He is impulsive. He spits on a book. He immediately bonds with Mordecai and Rigby over video games, fitting into their world of competitive laziness with an ease that Skips has never displayed. When Skips tells Walks that he eventually becomes a calm, helpful, well-read person who fixes things for people, Walks rejects the description with contempt. He says he would never become that person. He says he would never change his name. The dramatic irony is total. Every word Walks says is a statement he will eventually contradict with the entirety of his future existence. He will become calm because something will break the wildness out of him. He will become helpful because service will become his only available substitute for connection. He will change his name because the name he carries now will become too painful to keep. And the thing that will do all of this, the girl, the bully, the ceiling, the death, is still in his future, unreachable and inevitable. Skips does not tell Walks any of this. He gets him home. He uses Muscle Man's contact, a guy with a time machine, because Muscle Man always knows a guy, and sends Walks back to the 1700s. The episode ends with Walks returning to his own era, unchanged, unwarned, carrying a future that present-day Skips would not erase even if he could. Because erasing the tragedy would erase the person it created, and the person it created is the one who keeps the park running, and the fists of justice wielded, and the spirit dance performed. The encounter between Walks and present-day Skips illuminates something profound about how identity changes over centuries. When Walks rejects the idea of becoming Skips, he is not being theatrical. He is being honest. The person he is right now, the fighter, the rebel, the storm chaser who spits on books and starts brawls, bears almost no resemblance to the person he will become. The transformation from Walks to Skips is not a smooth evolution. It is a break, a rupture. Something is going to happen to Walks that will destroy the person he is and replace him with someone entirely different. And the replacement will take his body and his memories and his strength and use them for purposes that Walks cannot imagine and would not choose. Skips is not the person Walks grew into. Skips is the person Walks was forced to become by an event so devastating that it obliterated the person Walks was before it. The show grasps this distinction with remarkable clarity, and it does not ask the audience to celebrate the transformation. It does not frame present-day Skips as the better version of Walks. It frames Skips as what remains when the original version is destroyed. The calm is not growth. It is scar tissue. The wisdom is not the product of thoughtful development. It is the residue of consequences absorbed over centuries. The kindness is not a virtue Skips cultivated through practice. It is a deliberate decision made by someone who saw what happened when he let the rage, the Walks, take control. Every gentle moment Skips has in the present day is an act of suppression, a choice made in real time, to be the thing Mona would have wanted, rather than the thing he was before she softened him. This is why the meeting with Walks is so unsettling. Walks is the version of Skips that existed before love, before grief, before the deal. He is what Skips would have been without Mona. A fighter, a brawler, an angry young man with no direction and no tenderness. Meeting him is, for Skips, like looking into a mirror that shows not his reflection, but his skeleton. The fundamental structure of his personality, stripped of everything that was built on top of it. And that structure is violence. The piece was constructed later by a woman who did not survive long enough to see the building she started. The show reinforces this through a small but telling detail. Walks bonds instantly with Mordecai and Rigby. He plays their video games. He matches their energy. He fits into their slacker lifestyle with an ease that present-day Skips has never demonstrated. This is not because Walks is more fun than Skips. It is because Walks is their age, emotionally. He is a 20-something with no responsibilities and no long-term plans and no grief weighing down his every interaction. He is who they are. And the gap between who Walks is, young, reckless, free, and who Skips is, old, careful, bound, is the gap that the show keeps returning to. The gap that runs through every Skips episode like a fault line. Skips was them once. He was young once. He was free once. And then the ceiling fell, and freedom became a word that belonged to someone else. And the rest of his life became a series of obligations met with exactly enough competence to ensure that nobody ever asked whether he was all right. Before we move on, if you are enjoying this analysis, please consider subscribing. It helps the channel tremendously. That origin story receives its full and devastating rendering in Skip's story, the 22nd episode of the 5th season, which aired on April 21st, 2014. The episode is a half-hour special, double the standard length, and it is the episode that transforms Skips from a supporting character with interesting lore into one of the most fully realized figures in the history of animated television. It holds a 9.7 rating on IMDb. The reasons for that rating are not complicated. The episode simply tells the truth about who Skips is, and the truth is beautiful and terrible in equal measure. The framing device is Skips telling Mordecai and Rigby his story during a break at the park. He opens with a line that is both a joke and a tribute to his voice actor. A long time ago, in a high school, far away. Mark Hamill played Luke Skywalker. The reference is unmistakable. The audience laughs. And then the laughter fades, because the story Skips tells is not funny. Walks transfers to a school run by a headmaster named Bennett. He has been expelled from 3 previous schools for fighting. His mentor at this new school is Gareth, who gives him a tour of the cliques, athletes, bookish types, dramatics, goths, mobs, settlers. Among the student organizations is the Immortal Student Council, which is the guardians of eternal youth in their adolescent form. They are not cosmic babies floating in space. They are teenagers. Frightened teenagers who live under the shadow of Clorgbane, not yet a cosmic destroyer, but already the biggest, cruelest bully in the building. Clorgbane gives Wet Williams. He starts fights. He terrorizes the hallways. Nobody stands up to him. Nobody except Walks. Walks pushes back against Clorgbane. He does not flinch. The Guardians see this and recognize something. Immortal, with the will to fight the thing, they are too afraid to fight themselves. They begin planning. They will make Walks their champion. They will forge the fists of justice. The forging process takes most of the episode to complete, shown in a parallel narrative track that runs alongside the other half of the story. The other half is the love story, and it is rendered with a tenderness that regular show has never attempted before and will never quite reach again. Walks meets Mona. The meeting is accidental and messy. Cafeteria soup is involved. She is unimpressed by his reputation and unbothered by his temper. She is kind without being naive, smart without being condescending, and alive in a way that makes Walks, for the first time, want to be something other than a fighter. They spend time together. She teaches him to build things. He discovers a facility with tools and carpentry that will define the rest of his immortal life. The ability to fix things, to repair what is broken, which he learns not from combat training or cosmic mentorship, but from a girl who needs help constructing props for the school prom. They skip together. The animation softens when they are on screen. The palette warms. The lines round. The backgrounds blur. The world shrinks to 2 young yetis hopping across the ground in sync, and the rhythm of their movement is playful and intimate, and specific in the way that love between 2 people always is. Rigby interrupts the narration to complain that the story has become a romance. He wants action. He wants the fight. The show includes his reaction not to mock him, but to name what the audience might be feeling. Impatience for the spectacle, the desire to skip past the human stuff to get to the cosmic punch-up. But the love story is the action. Everything that Skips is, the name, the skipping, the solitude, the strength, the quiet, originates in these scenes with Mona. Without her, there is no transformation. Without her death, there is no vow. Without the vow, there is no Skips. The prom arrives. Walks has made 2 promises that cannot both be kept. He will take Mona to the dance. He will fight Clorgbane, whose cyclical return coincides with prom night. He tries to do both, moving between the dance floor and the parking lot, between tenderness and violence, between the person he loves and the duty he has accepted. The show frames the back and forth as a scheduling comedy, but the structure is a foreshadowing. Walks cannot maintain both lives. The domestic and the cosmic are on a collision course, and the collision point is the prom. Clorgbane crashes through the wall of the ballroom. The fight spills into the dance. Walks attacks Clorgbane with his bare hands, but Clorgbane is too strong, his mace too lethal. The Guardians deliver the fists of justice through Gareth, but before Walks can reach them, Clorgbane swings his weapon at the ceiling above Walks. The debris descends. Mona steps forward. She pushes Walks out of the way. The ceiling crushes her. The show holds on the rubble. One of the Guardians reaches into the debris and pulls out a heart-shaped locket, the one Walks gave to Mona earlier in the episode. He holds it up. Walks sees it. He understands what it means. The sound design strips away. The colors drain. And then Walks puts on the fists of justice and destroys Clorgbane with a violence that the show has never approached before. The punches are not heroic. They are the physical expression of grief that has no other outlet. He hits Clorgbane until Clorgbane is a point of light disappearing into the night sky. And then he stops, and the gymnasium is quiet, and Mona is dead, and the victory is hollowed out by the thing it cost. The aftermath is compressed into a few images. Years pass. Walks is unshaven and hollow. The Guardians approach him and offer the deal: eternal youth in exchange for serving as their champion, fighting Clorgbane every 157 years. Walks accepts. He is asked to choose a new name. He holds the locket. He thinks of Mona. He thinks of skipping with her across the school grounds. He chooses Skips. Back in the present, the story ends. Mordecai and Rigby are both visibly emotional. Mordecai calls the story kind of a downer. Rigby asks if Skips ever graduated. Skips holds the locket, the same locket, the one that has survived centuries in his pocket, and does not answer. The weight of this episode, the reason it rates higher than nearly every other episode of regular show, is not in the spectacle of the fight or the drama of the romance. It is in the precision of the emotional logic. Every detail connects. The reason Skips fixes things: Mona taught him carpentry. The reason Skips skips: Mona skipped with him. The reason Skips changed his name: the old name belonged to a version of himself that died alongside her. The reason Skips performs the spirit dance alone: the immortality he accepted was purchased with her death. And the annual ritual is the interest payment on a debt he will never finish paying. The entire character, every quirk and habit and silence, traces back to one person who died in a high school gymnasium while he was putting on a pair of golden gloves. The episode also recontextualizes every previous Skips episode with a retroactive depth that the show has been carefully preparing for. Go back to Free Cake with the knowledge of Mona, and the spirit dance takes on a different weight. It is not just a ritual to maintain immortality. It is a ritual connected to the deal that was offered in the aftermath of Mona's death. The deal that transformed a grieving young fighter into an eternal servant. The dance is a performance of that servitude, repeated annually. And the fact that Skips performs it alone is not just a logistical choice. It is an emotional one. The deal was made in solitude. The grief was experienced in solitude. The dance is solitude's physical form. Go back to Over the Top with the knowledge of Mona, and Skip's rage at being beaten by Rigby acquires an additional dimension. The strength that makes Skips dominant in arm wrestling is the same strength that the fists of justice conferred. A strength born from loss, from the moment he put on the gauntlets and channeled his grief into destruction. When that strength is undermined by a toy, the violation is not just about ego, it is about the purpose of his body. Skip's body is the way it is because of what happened on prom night. His muscles, his power, his physical dominance, all of it was developed in the service of a contract that began with Mona's death. Being beaten makes the body meaningless. And if the body is meaningless, then the contract that shaped it is meaningless. And if the contract is meaningless, then what was Mona's death for? Go back to Diary with the knowledge of Mona, and Skip's admission that he has forgotten why he skips becomes not just sad, but devastating on a molecular level. He has forgotten her. Not entirely. The locket proves that some part of the memory persists. Some physical artifact keeps the connection alive, but enough. Enough that the act of skipping, which was supposed to be an eternal memorial, has become an unexplained compulsion. The love story that defines his entire existence has faded to the point where the protagonist cannot remember the plot, and he knows this. He knows he has forgotten. The awareness of the forgetting is its own kind of grief, a second-order loss that sits on top of the original. He lost Mona, and then he lost the memory of losing Mona, and now he carries the knowledge that he is losing the knowledge, which is a recursive pain that has no bottom. This retroactive deepening is one of the most sophisticated narrative techniques regular show employs, and it is entirely characteristic of how the show builds its lore. Information is withheld not for the sake of mystery, but for the sake of impact. The audience is given years to form a relationship with Skips, years to see him as the calm fixer, the reliable anchor, the guy in the garage, before the show reveals what made him that way. By the time Skip's story airs, the audience has enough context to understand not just what happened, but why it matters. They have seen the spirit dance. They have seen the rage. They have seen the stress. They have seen the forgetting. And now, finally, they see the cause. And the cause is a teenage girl who taught a teenage boy to build things and to skip and to believe that fighting was not the only thing he was good at, and who died because the boy was too slow to save her. The locket is the show's most precise visual metaphor, a heart-shaped pendant, small enough to fit in a pocket, carried for centuries without being opened on screen. The show never shows Skips looking at whatever is inside it, a photograph, an engraving, a lock of hair. The audience does not know. The locket is sealed. Like Skips, the love it represents is contained, portable, hidden from view. He carries it the way he carries the grief, close to his body, always present, never displayed. The locket does not heal him. It does not comfort him. It is simply there, a weight in his pocket that corresponds to the weight in his chest, and its presence is its function. As long as he has it, he has proof that what happened was real, that Mona existed, that the love was real, that the loss was real, even if the details have faded, even if the face is blurred, even if the vow has become a reflex. The locket says, "This happened. You did not imagine it. She was here." The decision to set the flashback in a high school and to deliberately code the setting with details that feel more like the 1980s than the 1800s, including the music, the prom decorations, and Mona's dress, is one of the most subtle and effective choices in the episode. The anachronism is intentional. Regular Show has always been rooted in 1980s pop culture, and by placing Skip's origin story in a setting that reads as 1980s despite occurring in the 1800s, the show creates a bridge between Skip's past and the cultural vocabulary of the audience. The prom feels familiar. The cliques feel familiar. The experience of falling in love at school, the cafeteria encounters, the nervous conversations, the slow gravitational pull of two people who cannot stop finding reasons to be in the same room feels familiar regardless of the century in which it occurs. The show weaponizes this familiarity. It makes the audience feel what Walks feels. Recognize the experience from their own lives. Invest in the relationship the way they have invested in their own high school memories. And then it kills Mona. And the audience feels the loss not as observers, but as participants, because the show has carefully constructed a bridge between Walk's experience and their own. And when the ceiling falls, the bridge collapses, and both the character and the audience are standing in the rubble. This is the technique that makes Skip's story one of the highest rated episodes in the show's entire catalog. It is not the fight that earns the 9.7 on IMDb. It is not the cosmic mythology or the origin of the Fists of Justice. It is the love story. It is the cafeteria and the prom and the skipping and the locket. It is the show taking a character who has been present for over 100 episodes as a calm, reliable, slightly mysterious background figure, and revealing that the calm was built on top of a catastrophe, and the reliability was forged in the fire of a loss that nothing, not centuries, not immortality, not the guardians of eternal youth, can undo. The 9.7 rating is the audience recognizing that they have been watching a grieving man fix a golf cart for 4 seasons and never noticed. The anachronistic high school setting also accomplishes something else, something the show does not draw attention to, but which resonates across the rest of the series. By making Skip's high school experience feel like an American high school experience from the 1980s, the same era that informs all of Regular Show's cultural DNA, the show collapses the temporal distance between Skip's and the other characters. In Skip's story, Walks is not a figure from a remote historical era. He is a teenager in a setting that feels like the same cultural moment the show inhabits. He is, in that flashback, essentially the same age and the same type as Mordecai and Rigby. He is a young man with friends and interests, and a girl he likes, and no sense of how short the time is. The difference between Walks in the flashback and Mordecai in the present is not one of kind. It is one of outcome. Walks became Skips because the worst thing happened. Mordecai will become whoever he becomes, because different things will happen. Things that do not involve a collapsing ceiling, and a dead girl, and a deal with cosmic babies for eternal life. The characters started from the same place. The divergence was not inevitable. It was specific. It was one prom, one bully, one girl, one ceiling. Without those precise events, walks would have remained walks, and there would be no skips, and the park would have no yeti in the garage, and the problems Mordecai and Rigby create would have no one to solve them. Before we move on, if you are enjoying this analysis, please consider subscribing. It helps the channel tremendously. 3 months after that revelation, the show returns to Skips with an episode that takes his grief and tests whether it can bend. Skips in the Saddle, the 33rd episode of the 5th season, aired on July 17th, 2014, and its opening scene is a small masterpiece of quiet devastation. The park employees are gathered on the front steps of Pop's house. Skips approaches and asks if anyone wants to play cards at his house that night. The responses come quickly. Muscle Man and High Five Ghost have wrestling tickets with their girlfriends. Benson has a jazz concert with Audrey. Rigby has plans with Eileen. Mordecai has a laser light show with CJ. One by one, each person declines. Each person has a partner. Skips does not. The scene does not linger on Skip's reaction. It does not need to. The camera simply stays on him as the last excuse is delivered, and then he turns and walks away. Walks, not skips, which is a detail the show uses sparingly and always with purpose. When Skips walks instead of skipping, something is wrong. The skip is a performance. The walk is the truth. Mordecai notices. He and Rigby decide to help. They create a dating profile for Skips on a website, calling him Skipster. They fill it with exaggerated accomplishments. Fought monsters with a ninja sword. Arm wrestled death. They add that he loves kittens, because Rigby insists on showing a softer side. The profile receives 85,000 views. Skips is selected for a dating game show called It's a Date. The episode becomes a comedy about a centuries-old yeti trying to navigate the modern dating landscape, and it is genuinely funny. Rigby coaches him on answers. Skips refuses to say anything that is not straightforwardly honest. The clash between Skips' fundamental sincerity and the performative nonsense of dating shows is played perfectly. Skips wins the show. He is paired with a woman named Sheena, a molecular biologist. They go to Costa Rica together. The trip is depicted in a montage of beautiful locations, interspersed with Skips saving Sheena from various dangers, natural and supernatural, with increasing frequency. When Skips returns, Mordecai and Rigby ask how it went. Skips says she was too high maintenance. The comedy of that phrase, too high maintenance, from a man who fights cosmic bullies every 157 years, is immediate and satisfying. But the truth it conceals is harder. Skips is not looking for a partner. He is comparing every woman he meets to someone who has been dead for 200 years, and no living person can compete with the idealized memory of a first love that ended in tragedy. Mona was not perfect. The show is careful not to make her a saint. She was a teenager who spilled soup and built props and laughed at the world. But the relationship between Walks and Mona existed in a specific context: adolescence, discovery, the narrow world of a high school before everything expanded into infinity, and that context cannot be replicated. Skips is not in high school anymore. He is not mortal. He is not discovering anything for the first time. The conditions that made love possible for him the first time are conditions that his immortality permanently removed. The episode does not end with Skips finding love. It ends with him going back to the garage, back to the cards, back to the evening routine of a being who has accepted that he will spend the next several centuries alone. The show does not frame this as tragic. It frames it as settled. Skips tried. He went on the show. He flew to Costa Rica. He came back. He is not bitter about it. He is just done. The trying was the concession. The returning alone was the truth. This is the last major Skips-focused episode before the series moves into its final seasons, and it functions as a capstone on everything the show has built. The spirit dance, the arm wrestling, the technology, the bowling, the diary, the fists, the stress, the time travel, the origin story, and now the failed date. Each episode is a different facet of the same gem, and the gem is this: Skips is a being who lost the only thing that mattered to him and then arranged the rest of his existence so that the loss would never happen again. He will not love again because love ends in grief. He will not leave the park because the park is where the grief is kept. He will not stop skipping because the skipping is the last thread connecting him to the person he lost. Even though the thread is fraying, even though the memory it attaches to is dissolving, even though the motion has become a habit without a meaning, the connective tissue between all of these episodes is a single idea that regular show never states explicitly, but demonstrates in every frame of every Skip-centric moment. Immortality is not the opposite of death. Immortality is death happening to everyone else. Every person Skips has ever loved has died or will die. Every friend he has made has aged and faded or will age and fade. The Guardians persist, but they are employers, not companions. Tecmo persists because he merged with technology, but the relationship is one of shared history rather than chosen intimacy. The park employees, Mordecai, Rigby, Benson, Pops, Muscleman, High Five Ghost, are the closest thing Skips has to a family, and every one of them will age and die while he watches from the same garage with the same face and the same body and the same locket in his pocket. This is the existential condition that animates Skips across the entire run of regular show, even in episodes that are not about him. Every time Skips walks into a scene and solves a problem, the audience is watching an immortal being invest energy into the lives of people who will, from his perspective, be gone in an instant. The scale is vertiginous if you think about it for more than a few seconds. Skips has already lived through more human lifetimes than the park employees will collectively accumulate. He has already forgotten more people than they will ever meet, and yet he cares. He shows up, he fixes the cart, he puts out the fire, he arm wrestles death. He travels to the Himalayas. He does all of it knowing that these specific people, in this specific configuration, are temporary, that in 50 years, the park will have new employees and new problems, and Skips will be fixing those too. And the names Mordecai and Rigby will join the long list of names that once mattered and now are just sounds. The show never asks Skips to articulate this awareness. It does not give him a speech about the transience of mortal connections. It conveys his awareness through behavior, through the patience he shows when Mordecai and Rigby make mistakes, through the lack of surprise when crises emerge, through the measured way he approaches every problem as though he has seen 1,000 versions of it before, because he has. The patience is not a personality trait. It is the accumulated product of centuries of watching the same kinds of problems emerge, escalate, and resolve. Nothing Mordecai and Rigby do is new to Skips. The crises are new. The emotional patterns are ancient. This creates an asymmetry in every relationship Skips has at the park, an asymmetry that the show handles with remarkable subtlety. Mordecai and Rigby think of Skips as their friend, and they are right, he is their friend. But they are also, from Skip's perspective, the latest iteration of a recurring experience. He has had friends before. He has cared about people before. He has invested himself in relationships that he knew, from the start, would end with him standing alone beside a memorial, or a grave, or an empty chair. The investment is real. The love is real. But the knowledge that the investment is temporary, that these friendships have an expiration date, that Skips can feel approaching even if the other person cannot, adds a quality to his presence that the show captures through the simplest of means. Skips is often quiet in group scenes. He listens more than he speaks. He watches. He absorbs. He is present without being dominant, involved without being central, caring without being vulnerable. The posture of someone who has learned over centuries that getting too close to temporary people is a form of self-harm, and yet he does get close. That is the thing about Skips that separates him from a character who has simply given up. He keeps caring. He keeps investing. He keeps showing up at the birthday parties and the bowling tournaments and the employees' nights out at McCooligans. He volunteers his time and his strength and his knowledge, even though he knows that the people he is giving them to will be gone before he has time to process the giving. This is not optimism. Skips is not optimistic. It is something harder to name, a willingness to participate in something beautiful, even though the beauty is temporary, a refusal to let the knowledge of eventual loss prevent the experience of present connection. It is the emotional equivalent of planting a tree you will never sit under, except Skips will live to sit under the tree, and he will also live to watch the tree die, and he will plant another one after that, and another, and another. And at some point, the planting itself becomes the purpose, and the trees become incidental. Regular show, a show about time, always about time, understands this with a depth that its comedy format disguises. The show looks like a cartoon about a blue jay and a raccoon who are bad at their jobs. It is, underneath that surface, a meditation on how people experience duration differently and how those differences shape what they value and what they lose. Mordecai and Rigby experience time as abundance. They have plenty of it, or think they do, and they spend it without counting. Benson experiences time as scarcity. There is never enough of it, and the irresponsibility of his employees is a constant drain strain on a finite resource. Pops experiences time as irrelevant. His childlike wonder exists outside of temporal logic, in a permanent present tense that the final season reveals is connected to his cosmic nature. And Skip's experiences time as weight. Each day adds to the total. Each year adds to the centuries. Each friendship adds to the list of people he will eventually outlive. Time, for Skips, is not something he spends or saves or wastes. It is something he endures. And endurance, performed across a long enough span, becomes indistinguishable from devotion. The 2015 feature film Regular Show, the movie, which premiered at the Downtown Independent Theater in Los Angeles on August 14th, 2015, before its Cartoon Network television debut on November 25th of that year, adds another dimension to Skip's character without giving him a central role. The film is a time travel story in which Mordecai and Rigby must travel to their own high school past to prevent a former science teacher named Mr. Ross from using a Timonado to destroy the timeline. The film is about Mordecai and Rigby's friendship, their secrets, and the revelation that Rigby sabotaged Mordecai's college acceptance letter years ago. Skips is not the emotional center. He is, characteristically, the problem solver. During the time travel mission, the park crew splits up. Mordecai, Rigby, Benson, and Pops go to the high school to find the time machine. Skips, Muscle Man, and High Five Ghost stay behind to repair the damaged engines of the time ship. This division of labor is telling. The other characters go on the adventure. Skips fixes the vehicle that makes the adventure possible. He does not get the emotional scenes or the climactic confrontations. He gets the engine room, and he does the work without complaint, without drama, without any indication that being relegated to maintenance duty on the most important mission of the crew's life bothers him at all. Because it does not bother him. Maintenance is what he does. Maintenance is who he is. But the film contains one detail that resonates with Skip's larger story. The Timonado, the time-traveling tornado at the center of the conflict, is the same kind of phenomenon that brought teenage walks to the present day in A Skips in Time. The show's mythology connects time travel to Skip's past through the Timonado concept, suggesting that Skips has been entangled with temporal mechanics since his youth. His friend Samson, the young man he chased storms with, the man who became Tecmo, appears in the film to help defeat Mr. Ross. The two of them, centuries-old survivors of the same era, working together to fix a problem caused by time travel, are a living reminder that Skip's past is not just backstory. It is an ongoing condition. The 1700s never left him. They show up in his friends, his enemies, his obligations, his scars. The past does not recede for an immortal. It accumulates. Tecmo himself is an interesting counterpoint to Skips. Both men were young together in the 18th century. Both survived into the modern era, but they survived differently. Tecmo adapted. He merged with technology, becoming a cyborg, incorporating the new world into his body. Skips endured. He remained flesh and fur, the same body, the same hands, the same refusal to change. Their friendship, which the show depicts as warm but infrequent, is the friendship of two people who took different paths through the same problem and have not judged each other for the choice. Tecmo does not think Skips should have adapted. Skips does not think Tecmo should have remained organic. They simply are what they are. And the fact that they can still sit together across centuries of different decisions and work on the same problem without conflict is one of the quieter gifts the show gives Skips. He has a friend who understands. Not many friends. One. And that one is enough to prove that Skip's isolation is not absolute. It is chosen. He could have adapted. He could have changed. He chose not to. And the choice, whatever it has cost him, is his. The 6th and 7th seasons of Regular Show shift their focus toward the serialized elements that will dominate the final season. Mordecai's messy romantic entanglements with CJ and Margaret, the emerging threat of anti-Pops, the slow revelation that Pops is not simply the cheerful, lollipop-headed man he appears to be, but a cosmic entity with a destiny written in the fabric of the universe. Skips recedes into the background during these seasons, not because the show has forgotten him, but because the show has said what it needs to say. His spotlight episodes are behind him. His origin has been told. His grief has been named. His loneliness has been acknowledged. What remains is for the show to give him a final image, and the final image requires the end of the show itself. But even in the background, Skips continues to perform the function that defines him. In episode after episode, across seasons 6 and 7, he appears briefly, a scene here, a line there, to provide the answer, to offer the solution, to stand calmly while chaos swirls around him, and deliver the piece of knowledge that will resolve the plot. These appearances are not wasted screen time. They are deposits in a narrative account that the show has been building since season 1. Every time Skips walks into a room and says he knows what to do, the audience hears the same words with the weight of everything they now know about the character. The words are not confidence. They are routine. Skips has been saying, "I know what to do," for centuries. He has been solving other people's problems for centuries. The phrase is not a boast. It is a job description, delivered with the flat intonation of someone clocking in for a shift that will never end. The show's decision to give Skips fewer spotlight moments in the later seasons is itself a form of characterization. Mordecai and Rigby continue to develop. Mordecai navigates a disastrous love triangle, learns from his mistakes, begins the slow process of growing up. Rigby earns his high school diploma through a GED program, a moment that represents genuine character growth. Even Benson gets a romantic arc with Pam that resolves in the finale's epilogue. The other characters are changing. They are becoming different versions of themselves. Skips is not changing. Skips cannot change. The show acknowledges this by giving him less to do in the later seasons, not as a slight, but as a recognition that his arc is not an arc at all. It is a line, a flat, horizontal line extending in both directions into a past measured in centuries and a future measured in more centuries, with no inflection point and no resolution. To give Skips a late season development, a new love interest, a reconciliation with his past, a sudden desire to leave the park would be to betray the truth of the character. The truth is that Skips does not develop. He persists. And persistence, in a show about characters who are learning to stop persisting in the wrong things and start building the right ones, is both the most heroic and the most heartbreaking choice available. The show also uses the later seasons to deepen Skip's relationship with Benson, which evolves subtly across the series from employer-employee distance to something approaching mutual respect. Benson, who manages the park with the frustrated intensity of someone who knows his employees are not taking the job as seriously as he is, gradually comes to see Skips not just as the most competent worker on the roster, but as a kind of peer. Someone who has been at the park longer than Benson, who understands the work on a level that Benson cannot articulate, who shares the burden of keeping the place running without the luxury of ever clocking out. In the finale's epilogue, when Benson becomes the park's owner after Mr. Maillard's passing, the fact that Skips remains on staff is not just a logistical detail. It is a statement about their relationship. Benson kept Skips because Benson cannot imagine the park without him. Skips stayed because the park, under Benson's management, is the closest thing to a functioning family that Skips has experienced since the 1700s. Neither of them would say this. Neither of them needs to. The show trusts the audience to see it in the arrangement. The Appreciation Day episode, which aired in the second season, established early on that Skips has worked at the park longer than any other employee. The plaque ceremony in that episode awarded everyone except Mordecai and Rigby, who had not been there long enough. But the detail that sticks is Skip's tenure. He has been at the park since the 1800s, according to various references across the series. That means Skips has worked at this specific park, performing these specific tasks, for over 200 years. He has mowed the same lawns, repaired the same equipment, maintained the same grounds, while the world outside the park changed from horses to cars, from telegraphs to smartphones, from a nation in its infancy to whatever it has become now. The park persists. Skips persists. The two of them are bound together, not by contract. The Guardian's contract is about the spirit dance and Clorgbane, not about groundskeeping, but by something harder to name. A shared stubbornness, a mutual refusal to evolve. The park has stayed more or less the same, because Skips has kept it that way. And Skips has stayed more or less the same because the park has given him a reason to. The 8th season, titled Regular Show in Space, sends the park into orbit, literally. The park, building and all, is launched into space as part of the cosmic conflict between Pops and his twin brother Antipops, who is later revealed to be named Malum Kranos. The season is a departure from everything Regular Show has been. It is serialized. It is high stakes. It is darker. The slacker comedy of the early seasons is replaced by a war narrative with genuine consequences. Characters face mortality in ways the show never previously attempted. And Skips, the character who has already faced mortality, his own own and everyone else's, 1,000 times over, takes his place in the ensemble, and fights without flinching. Skips does not get a spotlight episode in Season 8. He does not need one. The show has spent 7 seasons building a complete portrait, and the 8th season's job is not to add to the portrait, but to place it in the frame. Every scene Skips occupies in the final season carries the accumulated weight of everything the audience knows about him. When he fights alongside the park crew, the audience sees a yeti who has been fighting for centuries, not out of passion, but out of obligation. Not because he believes the universe will be saved, but because he promised to try. And promises are the only currency he has left. When he interacts with Pops, whose gentle nature has always stood in contrast to Skip's quiet severity, the audience sees 2 characters who are both hiding cosmic histories beneath ordinary exteriors, both carrying burdens they cannot share with the people around them, both destined to fulfill roles they did not choose. The finale itself, a regular epic final battle, a 3-part special that aired on January 16th, 2017, is the show's most ambitious production. 33 minutes of cosmic warfare, emotional resolution, and the permanent end of a world that 244 episodes built. The park crew, aided by allies from across the show's run, the Baby Ducks, Carter and Briggs, the Guardians of Eternal Youth, Gary, Death, Party Horse, Tecmo, and more, faces Anti-Pops and his forces in a battle for the universe. The image of the giant mecha, formed by the Baby Ducks and incorporating Skips, the Guardians, Gary, Carter, Briggs, Death, and Party Horse 42699, is, for Skips, a kind of reunion that the show does not underscore, but trusts the audience to feel. Every figure in that mecha is someone from Skip's impossibly long life. The Guardians, who gave him his immortality and his obligation. Gary, who has driven him to their realm in that El Camino for centuries. Death, his eternal rival and reluctant peer. They are all here, fighting alongside him, not because they chose to be friends, but because the circumstances demanded it. The mecha is the closest thing Skips has to a family portrait, and it is assembled not at a dinner table, but on a battlefield, which is the only place where all of these relationships make sense simultaneously. Pops defeats Anti-Pops, not through violence, but through kindness. He hugs his evil twin. They fly into the sun together. The universe is saved, and the gentlest character in the show is gone. The park crew returns to Earth 3 years after they left. They mourn Pops. They erect a memorial statue beside the park. Benson gives a speech. The grief is communal and genuine, and, for Skips, almost certainly familiar. He has attended enough funerals. He has seen enough monuments. He knows what comes next. The grief softens, the monument weathers, the person fades, and the living continue living because that is the only option available to them. For Skips, it has always been the only option. Then the montage begins. David Bowie's Heroes plays over a sequence that compresses the remaining lives of every main character into images. Bowie had died on January 10th, 2016, roughly a year before the finale aired, and the use of Heroes functions as both a narrative choice and a tribute. Mordecai discovers painting, meets a female bat at a gallery opening or similar event, marries her, raises 3 children. His trajectory moves from aimlessness to purpose, from the park to a studio, from boyhood to fatherhood. Rigby and Eileen get married and have 2 daughters. Rigby, who spent 8 seasons as the most irresponsible character on the show, becomes a father and, implicitly, a functioning adult. Muscle Man and Starla have many children, all of whom inherit their father's habit of removing their shirts and yelling. High Five Ghost and his girlfriend Celia become party DJs touring in Prague. Benson inherits the park after Mr. Maillard's death marries Pam, becomes a kinder version of the frustrated manager he was for 8 seasons, and adopts cats along with his pet pig Applesauce. And Skips changes his jeans for jean shorts. The montage does not dwell on this detail. It presents it alongside the other characters' life changes, as though it belongs in the same category. Mordecai got married. Rigby had children. Skips cut the legs off his pants. The mismatch between the magnitude of the other characters' changes and the triviality of Skip's change is the entire point. It is the visual punchline of a joke that has been building for 8 seasons. And the joke is this: everyone else was always going to leave the holding pattern. The park was a way station for them, a place to mark time before the real stuff started. For Skips, the park was never a way station. It was the destination. He arrived there sometime around 1800, according to one episode's continuity, and he has not left, and he will not leave. and the only adjustment he will make to his existence as the centuries roll by is a hemline. The 25-year time skip brings the park crew back for a reunion. They are older. Mordecai and Rigby have gray hair and the soft bodies of middle age. Their children are grown or growing. The park looks the same. Benson is behind the desk, still giving morning announcements, but with a warmth he could not muster in his youth. And Skips is there, identical to the Skips who was there 25 years ago. Identical to the Skips who was there 125 years ago, standing beside a statue of Mr. Maillard that he and Muscle Man raised together. The reunion scene is warm and nostalgic and earned. Mordecai and Rigby, older now, reminisce about Pops. They laugh about how immature they used to be. They decide to play some old arcade games, because some part of them, the part that slacked off and played games and caused supernatural disasters, is still alive, just quieter now, folded into the larger shape of adult lives. The scene is about them. But look at Skips in the background. He is smiling. He is part of the group photo. He is present, but he is the same. Everyone else has been transformed by 25 years. New faces, new lives, new relationships. Skips has not been transformed by anything since the prom. The reunion is a bookend for everyone else. For Skips, it is a Wednesday. There will be another reunion, and another, and another. And at each one, Skips will look exactly the same, and the people around him will look a little older. And eventually, the people around him will stop coming, and new people will take their places. And Skips will learn their names, and help them with their problems, and fix their golf carts, and maybe, if they ask, tell them about the prom, and the girl, and the name. And then those people will leave too, and Skips will remain. The show, created by J.G. Quintel, ran for 244 episodes across 8 seasons, from September 6th, 2010 to January 16th, 2017. In that time, it won a Primetime Emmy Award for the 3rd season episode Eggcellent. It was nominated for Annie Awards and BAFTA Children's Awards. It spawned a feature film in 2015. It told stories about friendship and laziness and growing up and the specific terror of being in your 20s and not knowing what you want from a life that is already happening, whether you are ready for it or not. Those stories were wrapped in supernatural absurdity, demons, and portals, and sentient video games, and cosmic battles, but the core was always human, and nowhere was that core more exposed, more raw, more carefully handled than in the story of Skips. Regular Show is a show about time. Every Velvo analysis returns to this premise because the show returns to it in every episode, sometimes loudly, sometimes in whispers. Mordecai and Rigby waste time. Benson tries to manage time. Pops exists outside of time, in a perpetual childhood that turns out to be a cosmic condition. And Skips has more time than anyone, more than he wants, more than he can use. And the weight of it, the sheer crushing weight of an infinity that began with a loss and will continue until something finally ends it, is the thing that defines him. Mark Hamill, voicing Skips in what has been described as an impression of Harvey Fierstein, gave the character a gravelly warmth that made the weight bearable. Hamill, Luke Skywalker, the Joker, one of the most versatile voice actors in the history of the medium, took a character who could have been a one-note wise old man cliche and made him breathe. The voice is low and deliberate, as though each word has been weighed before it is released. Every time Skips says he knows what to do, there is something in the delivery that suggests exhaustion as much as confidence. The weariness of someone who has solved this kind of problem before and will solve it again, and derives no pleasure from the solution beyond the knowledge that his friends are safe for one more day. Every pause before an answer is not hesitation. It is the fraction of a second where Skips decides how much of the truth to share, how much of the centuries to compress into a sentence that a 23-year-old raccoon will understand. Hamill made the silences as eloquent as the speech, and the show's writers gave him silences worth inhabiting. The news that Hamill will reprise the role for Regular Show, The Lost Tapes, the revival series announced by Warner Bros. Discovery in June 2024, created by Quintel, set to premiere on Cartoon Network on May 11th, 2026, confirms that Skip's story is not over. The Yeti in the jean shorts is still in the park, still fixing things, still skipping, still carrying a locket that belonged to someone whose face he might not fully recall, but whose absence shaped every day of his immortal life. At Fan Expo Chicago in September 2024, Hamill confirmed his return with a phrase that captures everything. There is only one Skips, and he is very much looking forward to meeting with his old pal Rigby. He wrote to Quintel. Quintel responded with a gif of someone dancing with joy. There is only one Skips, one Yeti, who has been fixing things since the Revolutionary War. One voice, Hamill's, gravelly and warm and tired, that has been saying, I know what to do, for 8 seasons and 244 episodes. One name that was chosen in a moment of grief, in a ruined gymnasium, beside a locket pulled from rubble. One vow that has been kept every day for centuries, even as the reason for the vow has thinned to a whisper. One character who chose to stay in the park after everyone else left, because staying is the only form of devotion he knows, and devotion is the only thing he has left. The show's achievement with Skips is, in many ways, its quietest and most lasting achievement. Regular Show is remembered for many things. For its comedy, for its absurdity, for the specific cultural texture of its 1980s references, for the way it captured the aimless energy of being young and underemployed, and surrounded by friends who are just as lost as you are. Mordecai and Rigby are the faces of the show. Their relationship, the blue jay and the raccoon, the responsible one and the reckless one, the two friends who cannot imagine life without each other, even when they are driving each other toward insanity, is the engine that drives every episode. The show is about them. The merchandise is about them. The promotional materials feature them. And yet the character who lingers longest after the show ends, the one whose story keeps unfolding in the mind long after the screen goes dark, is the one who is never at the center. Skips operates on the periphery of the show's primary narrative, appearing in the margins, doing the work that allows the main character's stories to continue. He is the infrastructure. He is the foundation. He is the thing you do not notice until it is gone, and he will never be gone. Because that is the curse of his immortality, to be permanent in a world where everything else is passing through. The reason Skips lingers is not because he is the most dramatic character, or the most entertaining, or the most relatable. It is because he represents something that the show's core audience, people in their teens and 20s and 30s, people who watched Regular Show when it first aired and who rewatch it now on streaming platforms, will increasingly understand as they get older. Skips is what happens when the holding pattern ends. He is what the other side of growing up looks like. Not the triumphant other side where you figure out what you want and build a life around it, but the other side, the one nobody makes television about, where you have already built and already lost, and now you are just maintaining. Maintaining the park, maintaining the routine, maintaining the motion of a body that has forgotten why it moves the way it does, but cannot stop without collapsing. Every person who has ever lost something they could not replace knows what Skips knows. Not the details, not the spirit dance, not the fists of justice, not the immortality, the shape. The experience of waking up one day and realizing that the thing you built your life around is gone, and the structure you built around it is still standing, and you are going to live inside that structure for a very long time, because tearing it down would mean admitting that the foundation was lost, and the foundation was a person, and the person is dead, and nothing you do, no amount of skipping, no amount of fixing, no amount of arm wrestling, death will bring them back. The show never says any of this to Skips. It never gives him a moment of catharsis where he cries or screams or falls apart. It gives him something harder. It gives him Tuesday. It gives him the golf cart and the lawnmower and the fountain pump and the harpsichord that does not fit through the door, and the bench that needs painting, and the gas line that needs repairing, and the 23-year-old raccoon who cannot be bothered to do his own laundry, but who, in his small and careless way, makes Skips feel needed. It gives him another day in the park, and another, and another, and the days accumulate into years, and the years accumulate into centuries, and the centuries accumulate into a life that is, by any external measure, infinite, and by any internal measure, incomplete. Because Skips is not a metaphor. He is not a symbol of anything. He is a person, rendered with enough specificity and care that his experience feels real, even when the details are impossible. No one watching Regular Show has lived for centuries. No one watching has fought cosmic bullies with golden gauntlets, or arm wrestled the Grim Reaper, or performed a spirit dance in the woods to maintain their immortality. But everyone watching has known someone who stayed. Someone who kept showing up after everyone else moved on. Someone who carries a grief so old it has lost its edges, but not its weight. Someone who does the same thing every day, the same motion, the same rhythm, because the rhythm was once connected to something beautiful, and now it is connected only to itself. But stopping the rhythm would mean admitting that the beautiful thing is truly gone, and some admissions are too heavy to make. The show's refusal to fix Skips, to give him closure, to grant him a new love, to heal his grief, to provide a resolution to his centuries of solitude, is the bravest choice the writers made across the entire series. A lesser show would have given Skips a happy ending. It would have introduced a character in seasons 7 or 8 who understood him, who matched his depth, who earned his trust, and broke through the wall of calm that separates him from everyone else. The audience would have cheered, the resolution would have felt earned, and it would have been a lie. Because Skip's grief is not the kind that resolves. It is the kind that transforms. It has already transformed everything about him. His name, his gait, his home, his purpose, his relationship to time itself. There is nothing left to transform. The grief is not a problem to be solved. It is the architecture of his existence. Removing it would not heal him. It would demolish him. And the show knows this. And it respects this. And it lets Skips be what he is. A man defined by a loss he has almost forgotten. Still performing the rituals the loss created. Still carrying the locket. Still skipping. Still here. Skips because he promised. The promise was to Mona, but Mona is gone. And the promise has outlived its author, and its audience, and its context, and its meaning. It is a promise now only to himself. To the version of himself that stood in a ruined gymnasium with a locket in his hand and said, "I will never stop." He has not stopped. He will not stop. The show asks whether that is devotion or compulsion, whether the difference matters, whether a life defined by a single loss can still be a life worth living. It does not answer. It lets the question hang in the air, like the sound of a yeti's feet hitting the ground. Skip after skip after skip. The rhythm steady, the meaning uncertain, the motion continuing long after the music that inspired it has faded into silence. And maybe that is the final thing regular show tells you about Skips, the thing that holds all the other things together. Staying is not the same as giving up. Staying is not the same as being stuck. Staying for Skips is an act of faith. Faith that the park matters, that the people who pass through it matter, that fixing a golf cart or painting a bench or arm wrestling death for a raccoon's soul is worth doing, even when nobody will remember it in 100 years. Skips stays because staying is the only way he knows how to love. Not a person, not anymore. A place, a job, a rhythm, the careful, deliberate repetition of a day that gives him just enough purpose to justify continuing and continuing and continuing through centuries that no one else will see, and no history book will record, and no one at the reunion in 25 years will fully understand. The park in the end is not just a setting, it is a character. It is the physical manifestation of the holding pattern that defines the show, the place where time moves differently, where 20-somethings can spend years without progressing, and where an immortal yeti can spend centuries without changing. The park holds everyone equally, the slackers and the strivers, the mortal and the immortal, and it asks nothing of them except that they show up. Skips has shown up every day for over 200 years. He has outlasted every tree, every bench, every piece of equipment, every person. He will outlast the current employees and the next ones and the next. And through all of it, the park will remain because Skips will keep it running. Because keeping the park running is the thing he does instead of grieving. And the thing he does instead of grieving has become, over centuries, indistinguishable from love. An immortal yeti in jean shorts, standing beside a golf cart, in a park that has not changed. The sun going down the way it goes down every evening, indifferent to who is watching. The sounds of a world moving on, cars and birds and distant music, all of it temporary, all of it passing through. And Skips, alone in the garage, shuffling a deck of cards, not waiting for anything, not expecting anyone, just present, just here, just the steady rhythm of a body that has been in motion for longer than the park has existed, performing the same small tasks that keep the small world around him turning. The last image the show gives you. The first image that comes to mind when you hear his name. If you enjoyed this video essay, make sure to subscribe. Thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next.